let's go ahead and dig into the topic at hand, which is about the real purpose of initiation. So we've covered like the process of initiation extensively, the cost and things like that. And if you guys missed that, I have those videos available on my YouTube channel as well as on Spotify. If you want to catch those two episodes, greetings to everybody coming in. But today we're going to really talk about why get initiated, because this is a question that I've been getting a lot recently. Like, what's the real point of it, right? So, to get started, what is initiation? Just a broad overview. So, if initiation is a formal process that basically acknowledges, it solidifies, it strengthens your connection to Orunmila. Orunmila is referred to Ifa for people who may be new to the tradition or don't know, because sometimes people get that confused when you may get a reading and it says you need to initiate to Ifa, or rather, like somebody may get a reading and it comes out like that. Ifa is your head or Risha, and sometimes people get confused, like, well, I thought Ifa was the name of the tradition. It is, but it is also the way people refer to Orunmila, so it's used interchangeably there. All right. Initiation is designed to formalize that connection between you and Orunmila. It does not establish a connection. The connection was established before you became into the earth. Everybody has a connection to Ifa or Orunmila in the sense that Orunmila witnesses everybody's destiny. So that deity or force knows what you are meant to do. When you seek out Ifa divination, you are consulting, well, the priest or priestess rather, is consulting with Orunmila to understand your destined path and what you need to be doing at that particular time in relation to your specific destiny. So what initiation does is it formalizes that connection. So you can think of it like a marriage situation, right? Especially in the Western world where people tend to date and relate for extensive periods of time before they make that commitment to walk down the aisle and be together forever, as it's supposed to be. So what happens with that is you've already been in a connection with that person. It could be a short time, it could be a long time. But when the wedding, that's pretty much a ceremony, right? It solidifies the connection. It allows the world to witness that connection and know that you two are together at that point. That's pretty much the same concept of Ifa initiation, whereby you are you are solidifying that connection. It is being witnessed by those around, like the priest and priestesses, whoever is overseeing that process, and maybe some other individuals who've gone through initiation prior. They can witness the majority, if not all, of the stages of initiation, things of that nature, right? And then obviously you can report, like, I've been initiated into the tradition thereafter. After that point, it is also available to anybody. Any and everybody can initiate into Ifa. Doesn't matter your gender, especially any Shay. Let me qualify that statement as well. I'll get to some of the caveats with the gender because that was asked too. But your race, your ethnicity, it doesn't matter. You can choose to initiate into Ifa now. It's also up to the person whether they will initiate you or not. I'm going to take a few questions and then get back to it. So you said how much on average would an initiation cost? How much for an initiation for a Chosi on average? So with Ifa initiation, there's a very wide range. I did cover that in depth in a different video, so I encourage you to watch that. So we're looking at, it can be anywhere from about $3,000 to $30,000, right? And that just depends on where you're going to initiate, who is initiating you, things of that nature. Now, for Chosi, I don't know. I would not even put out that information, right? Especially in the public forum. When it comes to our initiation prices, you would have to be an established client, which means that you would get Ifa divination and complete at least a full set of EBO with us for us to give you, to quote you an exact price for initiation at that time period when you're looking for it. And that can change too, right? So even when we give out our rates, it's for a 30-day window, because you might get the rate, today, and you may not initiate until a year from now. And the rates would definitely have gone up a year from now because of inflation and things like that. Okay. Let's see. I gotta remove a comment of a person, rather. Let's see. Sorry about that, guys. So you said I did a divination and nothing that was said came to pass. Why? I even did the sacrifices. I cannot answer that specific question for you. You would have to speak with the individual, and that needs to be a private conversation. So whoever did the reading, whoever did the EBO, you need to speak with that particular individual about what's going on in your case, because they could possibly go back and, well, they should be able to go back and check with Ifa specifically to see what's going on in your individual case. Likewise, we are speaking about the initiation process today. We are not discussing divination as a whole and Ibo and things like that. Okay, what is the difference between receiving the hand of Ifa and full Ifa initiation? So receiving the hand of Ifa is Isefa, right? So that is when you get the sacred Aikin. This is when somebody, a priest or priestess, not just anybody, goes in and consecrate these Aikin for you and gives you this hand of Ifa in a vessel, usually a white pot. And it can be in person, it can be done remotely, things like that. That is something that will also take place, that does typically take place rather, during the Ifa initiation process itself, especially if you don't already have your hand of Ifa. If you already have it, you can bring it with you, and there are still things that need to be done to it during the initiation process, but it's not like getting it brand new all over again. Both can be done during the full initiation process itself, though. It doesn't have to be separate, but typically in the diaspora, it is done separately. So during that process, you get those objects, you learn how to work with it and perpetuate the icon so that you can learn more about your destiny and get more guidance there. Full initiation is the ceremony, right? And it's going back to what I was saying about the hand of Ifa. It can be done in person or remotely. Full initiation cannot be done remotely. You must absolutely be present during that particular time. This is what establishes that lifetime covenant between you and Orunmila, the deity or the Orisha of destiny. All right, much more extensive rituals, sacred oaths, just deeper responsibilities and knowledge that you get during that process that you would not otherwise have. Let me take some comments. Here you say, what is the most expensive Orisha to get initiated, and which one is the most time consuming? Which Orisha is the most difficult or consecrated ceremony? So that question I could not answer because I am not familiar with all initiation processes. I would imagine that most of them are about the same length of time. Of course, there are going to be some discrepancies in what is done. So, consecration processes, you would have to speak with someone about that. Also would be dependent on, especially the price, it would be dependent heavily on who is doing it. Even so, who is doing it, there will be some discrepancies in the process. Shouldn't be too much, but it can be, actually. I take that back, depending on the process of you that you're going through. So if you're going through Isese, the tradition out of West Africa, it will be somewhat different, even a lot different in ways than going through initiation through the Lukumi, the Santeria traditions out of the Caribbean islands. So, but I don't know. As far as the pricing goes, you would have to connect with someone. Anything on pricing, I would advise you guys to talk to a person specifically who you plan to initiate with, right? And that being said, as I just said before, like we don't do the type of price shopping. You can't just email us and say, "Can you give me the cost of Ifa initiation at your temple?" If we're not already working with you, it requires a connection that's already in place for us to give you those types of details about our process. Somebody else may be willing to give you that without it, and that is absolutely perfectly fine if that's their process, but it's not our process. Well, so please be mindful and respectful of that. Can women be initiated into Ifa? So definitely, you can be initiated as a female. It is a different process as males, regardless of. Well, I'm gonna say this. Initiation, it is a somewhat of a different process. Most of it is the same, but there are some changes that go on within the process because a woman can't go in and witness her act or do in the same way as a man can. And that's within Isese, again, the tradition as it is in West Africa. Now, some of the diaspora traditions, like I said before, the Lukumi, the Santeria, they do allow women to be initiated, but there are likewise some restrictions in that process as well. That being said, women are restricted from becoming priestesses in some of the houses within the Lukumi Santeria. Most from what I know, there may be some that do allow it, but from what I hear and what I've talked to people directly, I've been told that women cannot, serve in their role as an Ifa priestess. I think they can serve as priestesses of certain orishas. I'm not quite sure about that part, but you would have to consult with those traditions to know because I am not an expert in those other traditions. What age do you need to be in order to undergo the process of Ifa initiation? So there's no fixed age. It's more so about your level of understanding. A young child can absolutely go through the process as long as they can do certain things, especially they need to be able to talk because at points they'll need to be able to recite certain things. If they can follow basic directions and things like that, they can absolutely go through the process of Ifa initiation. All right. So that's pretty much the caveat there. Of course, that does play out differently in the diaspora than it typically does in West Africa, just because of the fact that people in West Africa typically born into the tradition, so they do tend to initiate much earlier, very young ages, than individuals in the diaspora. In the diaspora, you'll see people coming into the tradition really late in life, and so obviously they will initiate later in life. It's nothing to see somebody in their 50s, 60s, 70s go through initiation processes throughout the diaspora because for a lot of their life they probably were practicing something completely different, and once they learn about the tradition they decide to integrate it into it in that way. Okay, you're saying you understand that prices vary, just trying to figure it out. If what I was told is true, was told Okoshi's initiation costs more because Okoshi deals with the justice system and jails. Possibly. Again, I don't know. I am not familiar with, we've not taken, I know that we can, but I'll say I have not worked with that process of taking anybody through an Okoshi initiation process. So I don't know the price. I don't know the process. I mean, if it's because he deals with the justice system in jails, that same logic would actually apply to Shango. So I don't know, was that a diaspora tradition or was it like in West Africa? Because that makes a difference as well. And too expensive is relative because like a lot of places in the Caribbean islands or what have you, it can be much more economical to go through the initiation process. That being said, the initiation process is different than what you would typically go through in West Africa or even so in like the US or something like that. So you would have to you're saying leukemia. I figured that that's kind of what it sounded like because they work with that particular Orisha quite frequently. So you know, you would have to connect with them to understand their pricing strategy. When it comes to pricing, I would just say this: the number one thing I advise people, if you can't afford it, don't go down that path. Don't try to make it fit. Or if you especially are uncomfortable with the price, you may could reconsider or really at least think about what you're doing, right? And when I say can't afford it, doesn't have to be like right then and there. Maybe you're quoted a price, like I said before, because we do this as well. We quote prices to our established clients, and they may not get initiated right away, right? It may take some months, it may take some years for certain people, but they have a sense or an understanding of what they're looking at, right? The cost, so they can start saving away for it. But my thing is, like, if it's not within your budget at the moment, do not feel compelled to just go through that process unless you're facing an urgent situation that necessitates you do so. All right. So, how did I get here? Okay, sorry. The next question is: does everyone have to initiate to practice Ifa? No, and I've said this several times before, guys. You do not have to be initiated in order to practice the tradition. Okay, you can absolutely maintain a very strong relationship and connection with Ifa, with the tradition, with other Orishas, without going through the full process of initiation. Even so, without getting the icons, it is up to you. Okay, in some cases, you have people who have very active practices who never go down the path of initiation, who never acquire an icon. Your level of practice, like, right, and how you connect with the tradition is the most important thing. It's not that IFA initiation is not important and it won't bring you some major benefits, because it absolutely will. But the initiation process is just that, it's a process, it's a ceremony. It's, you still have to maintain ongoing commitments thereafter. It is not just, hey, we're gonna just move forward or what have you and do this process and then everything is good in your life. And I'm gonna get to that later on as well. You're saying you're in New Jersey. Yeah. So it's gonna vary. Even if it's like somebody practicing leukemia in New Jersey, it's still just, it's different. Like, the process of initiation is different. Greetings, greetings, greetings. I will just thank you for joining us. So let's get to the purpose and the spiritual function, deeper level of the initiation process. Because I was asked it multiple times, like, why do people initiate into Ifa? For the most part, I can say it's just a personal desire to deepen their relationship to the tradition, deepen their connection to Orunmila. If they proceed and go down the path of other Orisha initiations, it's to deepen their spiritual connection with those forces as well. Okay. Sometimes it'll be recommended through Ifa divination. So you get an Ifa reading, it may come up, you need to get initiated. And so some people just choose a path of initiation based on that information alone. And then other cases, of course, for young children, the parents may choose to take them through the route of Ifa initiation, especially if the child is dealing with a situation in which doing that would remedy their situation, their problems, or what have you, quicker than not doing so. Okay. Let's see. Greetings, greetings. D.O. James, greetings. Alrighty. So, what does Ifa initiation actually do for your life? So, it is going to absolutely help you to understand your destiny more clearly, understanding your purpose, why you came here, what you're supposed to be doing, how to live out that purpose in the most efficient, balanced way possible, right? That's what the overall scope of purpose is about, right? The deeper, day to day life benefits. It also opens you up to that knowledge, that deeper information, the mysteries of the traditions that you won't have unless you go through that initiation process. As I said before, most importantly, it solidifies your connection with Orunmila. Okay. Now, sorry, I had another message. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. What um what is the meaning and protection of having your hand of Ifa? Was another question that I was asked. Having your hand of Ifa basically means that you've been formally introduced to a room. You have the Akin, you've gone through the process of Isefa, it has been performed for you. All right. You can gain deeper insight through working with the icon. You can perform OB divination to get answers to certain questions, not the same as Ifa divination whatsoever, but it does give you more insight that you can work with the icon on your own. You don't have to always like go to the priest to, have certain prayers or things like that. Said for you, you go right there to the deity, you talk with it, you do your incantations and your spiritual work, you give offerings, and you can get greater insight because the energy, the essence of the Orisha, Orunmila, is right there in those sacred tools, the Akim and things like that. All right. So it can help you out a lot, give you a lot of guidance and insight on your own without having to always do full on Ifa divination. Okay. But it doesn't give you immunity to all of your life problems, right? Or protect you when you're not walking in alignment with your evil pellet. That's important too, because sometimes people just think, well, I can get this icon, I can go through initiation, and boom, everything is good. I don't have to, live a certain way. I can basically live any way that I want to live, right? So that's not the reality either. You said here on Instagram, since it's a closed practice, would initiation be warranted? So I don't know. I don't understand what the question is. Ifa is not 100% a closed practice. Anybody can come into Ifa. It's closed in the sense that you are working with a specific family line or lineage, but it's not closed in the sense, especially like if we're talking about things like hoodoo and things like that. Again, initiation is a personal decision, so you can go down that path. You don't have to. It can also come up in Ifa divination. It doesn't matter your background. You don't have to be Yoruba for it to come up in an Ifa reading that you need to be initiated. So I hope that answered your question. Not sure. So Johnny, you're saying I got my initial initiation where I got my first 5 Bs, which are language and go about to let you know. Then I got my girls warriors, which are right. So yeah, this is what they call initiation in Lukumi. What you just described is not considered to be initiation in Isese. In Isese, you actually initiate unto one spirit at a time. I know it's done like this in Lukumi. We do not consider receiving Ileki beads as initiation itself. Like, it's part of the initiation process, but it is not initiation just to receive your beads. And I know you're not saying that that's all you did. I'm saying this because there is a thing that you see on the internet, unfortunately, where people are promoting Ileki bead initiations, and that's not a such thing in Isheshe, right? The practice out of West Africa is really not even a thing in the diaspora. Is certain things that people are unfortunately promoting to, just get people's money. I'm just going to call it what it is. That's what it is, right? So full initiation is next, but my godmother's almost 90. Her health is starting to fail. So I'm trying to figure out my steps in life. I got you. So yeah, it just depends. It just depends on, your process and what you want to do. But, take with you the understanding from today that the process that you have gone through and the process that you will probably complete is different than what I'm actually referring to here. I'm referring to Ifa initiation, and this is a process that you go through one at a time in Isese. It's not to say that there aren't similar elements in the processes. It's just that they do it differently. In the West Africa than they do in Lukamian practices like that. Okay. Um, say you practice Lukami, so this confirms my first thought. Are you saying it confirms your first thought that it's a closed practice, Lukami? Possibly it is considered such. Again, I don't practice Lukami. From what I know, like anybody can join Lukami. I haven't really seen people consider it to be a closed practice, but if that's your experience, I respect that. Right. Alafia to all who are joining. Um, you said it's too different. To be honest, been my issue since I came over to Ishesha. It is, and thank you for pointing that out. And as somebody who practices like the Luca because I don't really like to speak on it because I don't practice it. I have talked to a number of people who do practice it. I've read a lot of information, but I can't speak from a space of true experience when it comes to Luca because I don't practice it. I just know what I've heard and what I've seen and read about and things like that. Um, Carol, sorry, I'm just getting to you. Ileki, I guess you're referring to Ileki bees. I don't know what the comment refers to specifically. Let's see. Is initiation supposed to fix all of your problems? Absolutely not. And I feel redundant in saying this, but unfortunately, this is what some people think on their own. And of course, sometimes it's what people tell them, like you get initiated and everything is good in your life. And that's not true either. Initiation is not meant to fix all your problems. There are certain things that you have to go through in life that is actually part of your destined path for you to learn certain lessons and for you to grow and for you to achieve certain things. All right. But initiation will help you to connect with your path better, understand your path better so that you can walk it and you can live your experience as you need to. Challenges will absolutely still exist, right? So, don't approach it as a panayaka, like I'm going to get initiated and, life is just going to be this grand old vacation all the time because that doesn't happen either. Okay, you said you got your legacy and soon will be receiving your hand of Orunmila. I think you're practicing Lukami based on what you're saying as well because in the Sheshe practice, when you get your hand of Ifa or Orunmila, it should come with, and I'm gonna tell you guys that now for people who haven't received a hand of Ifa, it should come with Elekis. These are not Orunmila Elekis, but Elekis in general for people who are not familiar with that process. So you should get a consecrated pot, you should get the sacred Akin, you should get the Elekis for Orunmila. I don't know why I didn't put Orunmila around my neck today. I went to grab something and Ogun was calling my name. So I just put these on. All right, so let's see. You said, yes, anybody can join. I think when she said close, she's not talking about ethnicity. I think she's referring to just practicing by yourself without divination, a padrino, or etc. I mean, right. So, like, Isheshe would not be close in that sense either. I got you. So, I guess you're talking about not being familiarly close. So, like, yeah. So, hoodoo is like one of those kind of conundrums where it's like hoodoo is a closed practice. Everybody's not invited to the party type of thing. And absolutely, there are a lot of people who especially nowadays, are integrating into hoodoo as a solo practitioner. However, hoodoo, in its original state was likewise familiarly based, but we moved away from it so much. So this is one of the reasons. So you said, so my big question, what does initiation help with? I mean, it's not free, it's at times quite expensive. So what does initiation help with? So I've already explained those parts. I don't know if you were here. The number one thing, and I'm going to get deeper into that question as well. The number one thing about initiation, it is connecting you closer with Orunmila, so you have greater insight about your destiny. There you are going to receive your lifetime overdue, and you'll know what you were meant to do, your purpose. You'll know how to fulfill your purpose. You connect with the spiritual path much better, so you get greater insight. It can absolutely help you out with certain challenges that you're dealing with in your life that are caused by you not having that connection, especially if this is something that was predestined for you. Okay. Another question I had is, does initiation change your destiny? So no, it's not going to change your destiny in the sense like you think, well, I've had such bad experiences in life. If I go and get initiated, my path is automatically change. No, what was there is already there. The difference is you are aligning with your path. So yes, it will make the road a whole lot smoother in many ways, but it is not going to change what was already destined for you. Okay. Let's see. You said, good afternoon. Thank you for the live. When Orunmila is recommending hand of Ifa, what should I expect? What should you expect in what regards? If you can give me a little bit more input as far as what do you mean by that? Let's see. Does initiation give you spiritual power? So it doesn't give you spiritual power. What it does is it connects you with your own innate natural power, right? It helps to activate that, and it helps to be consistent and steady, because this is one thing that people often complain about. It's like they know they have spiritual power. They can only access it at certain times, like prior to initiation. They can only access that power at certain times, usually when they're in a space of distress or something like that, or at a really challenging moment, and they'll be able to get that power because usually that's when their emotions are high and they're really trying to figure out how to do something. But they notice that it's much harder for them to connect with that power rather, in normal situations or circumstances. And so once you go through initiation, you'll be able to connect with that power on a deeper level, and it'll be much more consistent, provided that you are still, trying to live in alignment with what you have been given throughout that process, right? So that means still walking in e-repellent, following your taboos, because you receive your permanent taboos, and that's important too during the initiation process. That is so important. A lot of people don't realize the importance of getting your taboos, because right now, so many people are violating their permanent taboos, but they don't know it because they've never gone through the process of Ifa initiation, right? And so it could be something that you're doing daily, and you're violating your taboos. You don't know it. Once you receive that information, you know, okay, to stop. You stop doing that, and you do the EBO and everything, the sacrifices you need to do to balance out your energy properly. Your life could just change dramatically just by that alone. Okay. But it just depends on, each person's path. Depends on your path, what's going on, what you've been doing throughout. It also provides the wisdom and understanding that you need to direct that power, whatever power you already have within you, to direct it properly. Again, this is not about like, I'm going to get all this just spiritual power and be able to do all these extra things. The power is already within you. The process of initiation is what helps to truly activate it and stabilize that power. Okay. Um, Let's see, you said in the process of getting it, well, as far as you can share, you said, okay. The process of getting it. So are you saying like the process of actually receiving it? I'm still not fully understanding your question. So you're saying What when Orunmila recommends the hand of Ifa, what can you expect as far as the process of receiving the hand of Ifa? Is that the question? You just let me know that. Okay. Um, you're saying here more challenges will arise and you open yourself more to spiritual attacks due to the enhanced spiritual ashe. That could be a possibility. It's not a definitive, like everybody's going to experience more challenges. Actually, IFA initiation is supposed to help you to mitigate a lot of the challenges. Not to say, I won't even say more will arise. It's just going to, whatever is meant to happen is going to happen, right? But if you go through the process of initiation and you do what you're supposed to do, again, walking in your iwapele, not violating your taboos, fulfilling your destined path, listening to, whatever warnings you've been given, things like that during the process, then it should actually be much easier for you. Whereas before, maybe it was more difficult for you to navigate challenges. It should be much easier at that point. Okay. Um, you're saying yes, you're talking about the process. So if it's in Isheshe, it depends on how you get it. If you're locally based, if you go to the actual your priest or priestess or what have you, they can consecrate that vessel and possibly even show you part of the process. It depends on just how they do it, right? And then you receive the hand of Ifa, as I said before, which is going to come with the sacred I King. It should come with a consecrated pot, a white pot, and your Eleki. So you receive those things. You should be told how to actually perpetuate the icon, to work with it, how to give it offerings, right? Um, you should be given incantations, things like that. Like, what are you saying? I don't know if they're going to present it in Europe, but in English, that's the question that you would have to ask. Obviously, they should be presenting it in a language that you understand, but maybe they won't. I don't know. So you would have to talk to them. And then you just work with the icon. You choose, if you want to work with it weekly, even so, you can do it daily. You can do it every 4 days on the standard traditional calendar cycle. It just depends on you with that. You're saying your intuition opens up more for sure. You get greater into intuitive hits and you're able to know what to do with them. And you may also already be inclined in that area, but the clarity will be much more there for you. So thank you for passing on the traditional wisdom. You are very welcome. Thank you for joining us. Likewise. So you're saying, so without initiation, how can I find out my taboos? You cannot find out your permanent taboos without going through the initiation process. You could, like during an IFA reading, there may just naturally be temporary taboos presented to you, or even so sometimes permanent taboos, depending on your case. So it might be a situation, for instance, I always lean on Obatala for this because he's the most prominent when it comes to this with like all of his children. So you might find out that you're a child of Obatala, and then that you find out that you should not drink a lot, drink alcohol is what I mean, not get like drunk and things like that, right? And that's pretty much for all the children of Obatala, and that is not going to change after initiation. So if you were drinking alcohol heavily before that, you're gonna have to figure out how to curtail your appetite for alcohol. And there's a coach and things like that that can help. It's not like you have to do all of it on your own. But point being, you have to be ready for that reality. That being said, you're not gonna have your permanent taboos necessarily before that. It's not a guarantee. All right. It could happen, but it's not a guarantee for everybody. But to get your permanent taboos, IFA initiation. That's how that goes. All right. You said especially when you start doing work for others. You saying with your intuition, yes, it will help you greatly. Okay. Preparation and readiness. So, how do you know if you are ready for IFA initiation? I get this question all the time from individuals who are like, I don't know if it's for me. Ultimately, I always say this is a decision that you have to make. Usually it's going to be intuitively based. You just know, right? You can pray and you can talk to Ifa and ask, like, should I, let me know, give me a sign. You can do so many different things to try to figure out if it's for you. But a lot of times people just intuitively know, they just feel it like it's time. I'm ready to, you know, walk through the sacred grove, so to speak. Otherwise, it may appear in a reading and tell you you need to be initiated. Sometimes it might be urgent, so it's something that you need to go ahead and get done as soon as possible. All right. But otherwise, unless it's urgent, I still feel like you should be intuitively led to do so. Like it just comes to you, like, okay, even if it comes up in a reading, it still should be your decision, your personal decision. It's not something that you should be coerced into or compelled to do based on somebody pressuring you. What preparation is required before you get initiation? Another question. Education. Education is so key to me for anybody, period, that's practicing the tradition, but definitely for individuals who are coming new into the tradition and they've been separated from it, especially prior to like their adult life or something like that. Like educate yourself, understand the entire tradition, as much of the tradition as you can. When I say the entire tradition, I'm not saying like you have to be like full on scholar mode knowing about the tradition, but you need to have a base foundation for understanding what you're actually getting yourself into when it comes to practicing Ifa. Understanding it's not just I'm going to go through this ceremony and get initiated, and that's it, right? I'm done. Or even so, receiving the hand of Ifa. Understand what the tradition is, understand the difference in, the different orishas that you're working with. Know what they take, know what they accept. There's just so much that you need to learn in this regard, okay? Learn what is expected of you as a devotee of Ifa. What do you need to do? What do you need to, how do you need to move through life and things like that as you work with the tradition? Absolutely understand the initiation process itself. That is paramount. Know what you're getting into, understand the cost. That's important, very important. Understand the logistics, especially if you're having to travel. Well, even if you don't have to travel, understand that if you have to like take time off for work and so forth and so on, like do your research, do your homework on the entire process of the initiation itself. You say you're in Dayton, Ohio, and you really don't trust just anyone to do anything with my spiritual knowledge. Can you point me in the right direction to get proper initiation? So at Asanee 44, we have our own temple that we work through is out of Nigeria. That is the only temple that I recommend. So I don't know otherwise what you mean as far as pointing you in the right direction. I can only recommend what I know and what I trust myself because I feel you on that. You should not just trust anybody out here. But that being said, it should be an intuitive led decision, just like initiation, right? So you should feel whoever you are working with. You should know that is right for you. Take some time to work with the person. I'm going to get to that too because that's so paramount. Like, don't just go and get an Ifa reading and somebody says you need to initiate into Ifa, and you just go down that path without spending time with the person who is going to initiate you, because that person becomes your godparent, and that person is then responsible for you spiritually thereafter. So you at least want to get along with that person. You need to know who you're working with because unfortunately I hear that a lot as well. People go down that path with somebody they don't really know, they initiate, and then the whole dynamics of the relationship change after that, and they suffer. They suffer quite a bit. And that was another question, even so that it's going to come up, talking about that. Somebody asked about, I can't remember the exact question, but we'll get to it shortly. Can you be initiated if you're going through a hard time? Absolutely, you can be. That being said, I still would recommend trying to study and get to know as much about the tradition as possible. However, sometimes you are under high stress situation where initiation is mandatory for you to, just move forward in your journey and not experience really, really serious conditions thereafter, even so up to death. Unfortunately, that happens too. So, you can still go through it, even if you've been working with somebody for years and like you're going through a particular rough patch. It's okay to get initiated during that time. It's not about perfection. The initiation process. Again, go back, think about like a marriage. Most of the time, brides and grooms are under much duress when they actually go through the marriage ceremony. It's a really stressful, highly anxious time, and it's not always perfect. Somebody's parent may have just passed away right before they get married. Somebody may have just, endured a tragedy or a financial hardship or a health scare or what have you. The ceremony has already been planned, and they got to go through with it and then go and figure out life thereafter. So it is possible to do so. Ideally, you don't want that to happen, but such is life. Honestly, I've been watching you for a long time. I trust you. I want to get further information about the place you said. Okay, perfect. Yes, just DM me a temple, the word temple. That's our temple. You can find a lot of information about it on the website, asanee44.com. And, I'll be more than happy to answer some questions for you about that. All right. Another question people ask is, do you need to be spiritually clean before you initiate? Right. So, it's not a requirement. It's sort of like they say in the church, come as you are. That's what you're supposed to do. Is to come into the tradition as you are, I should say that. That being said, like, if you can help it, I wouldn't just say go straight to initiation itself if you haven't done some work as far as trying to properly align yourself or balance out your energy. Yes, the initiation will help you with that in the course of time. But again, that goes along to me with like just learning about the tradition and understanding what you are getting yourself into. A lot of times, people who have that mindset like I'm going to go through initiation to clean myself up, that somebody just like trying to force the tradition to do something that is not meant to do, trying to force the initiation experience to be this panacea that it is not. That's not what it's designed to be. All right, it's not meant to fix everything automatically. So another question: what does it mean when Ifa says someone needs to be initiated? Right. So if it does come up in a reading and say you need to be initiated, that means that it's part of your predestined agreements. Before you came into the earth, you made contracts. You said, I'm going to initiate unto Ifa when I have my earthly journey. You said that beforehand. When you come to the earth, you're reminded of that through the Ifa divination process. It's up to you whether to fulfill that calling or not. All right. Can you refuse initiation if Ifa calls you to initiate? Obviously, yes. Like, you're not forced to do anything. Nobody should ever try to force you. As I said before, and I will always say, it should be a personal, intuitively led decision. This is not something that somebody else can decide for you as a competent adult. It's different with children, obviously, but as a competent adult, like, nobody should be making that decision for you. Okay. And likewise, like if it's an incapacitated adult and they need to go through the process, somebody else can make that decision for them if they are not deemed capable of making decisions for themselves in that regard. But otherwise, nobody should be forcing you to do this. That being said, if you refuse, like if Ifa has told you once, twice, or even multiple times, after that, you need to go through initiation and you just like refuse to do it. Not that you are waiting to do it. And there's two different things. For some people, wait until they have the financial resources or the timing is right based on, their life circumstances. That's different than somebody just saying, I don't care what Ifa said, I'm not going through the initiation pathway Right. So you're probably going to experience challenges if you're just outright refusing to go through initiation and you've been told that you need to do so. All right. Post initiation life and then responsibility. So, what changes in your life after you initiate? Ideally, and I say ideally because this is not automatic. It's going, there are certain aspects of it that will be automatic where you will have the intuitive insight, those types of things. But it also is contingent on the way that you live and the way that you walk. All right. You will begin to change based on the wisdom and the insight that you receive. So if you receive your lifetime, well, you should not if. When you receive your lifetime Odu, when you receive your taboos, you get deeper level knowledge about yourself, your purpose, what path you're supposed to walk, what types of things you're supposed to avoid in order to enhance your path, what types of things you should be doing to enhance your path, things like that. So you get a whole lot more information that can help you make a whole lot of sense of your life, right? In different respects. Okay. But that's how it's all about how you use that information, not just about getting the information. It's about, the wisdom. Wisdom is when we get information, we apply it to our lives for the betterment of our lives. That's how that goes. All right. The ritual work, there's a lot of ritual work. You get a lot of elbow. It's going to do a whole lot of balancing. From that alone, you're probably just going to feel a whole energetic shift. You should, if it's done properly. You're going to feel an energetic shift throughout that process. It's gonna, all of that is meant to bring you into alignment. There may be other things that you do as well, like a crochet spiritual medicine that can help out with that as well, depending on what goes on in your experience. As your internal balance, you start to experience harmony within, peace of mind, things of that nature. Your external circumstances will likewise map to that change, to the alignment that you experience. So some things that you're going through will be lessened, absolutely, right? Disappear altogether in certain circumstances. So just be easier for you to navigate, even if you're still going through it, right? You'll have the mental aptitude to deal with things in a much better way. Okay. You said, do these guidelines apply to Orisha initiation as well? Partly, good question, and I'm going to get into the discrepancies between Ifa and Orisha initiation steps because I was asked about that beforehand. I say partially because of Ifa's role in, you know, Yoruba cosmology. So it's a little bit different, but I'll get to them in more in depth when I get to that stage. All right. So, what are the responsibilities of an initiated person? Right. Number one, you got to fulfill your destiny. Right. So once you know, you need to be doing what you know. You be walking in that path. You need to be following your taboos, adhering to whatever guidance that you were given at that point. Okay. Do you have to learn the Odu after initiation? No, not unless you are going to become a priest or a priestess, right? You're not relegated to learning the Odu. However, you should absolutely learn and study your personal Odu. So everybody is different here. When you go through initiation, some people give you a thorough outline of your personal Odu for you to study it and for you to know it. Some people just tell you the name of your personal Odu and you, or your lifetime Odu or what have you, and you will be responsible for having to go out and search that information and look more into it, right? But even if they don't give you the full scope of it, they should at least tell you what taboos apply to you from that lifetime Odu. This is not something you should have to go and scout out on your own because you will be given a lifetime Odu, and it does come with so many taboos that may or may not be applicable to your specific circumstance. So be mindful of that if you go through the process and nobody gave you taboos. You need to go and ask about that to that person, not to somebody else, to whoever took you through the initiation process. Does, and I'll say this now, since you are listening to this part, if you haven't gone through initiation, make sure that you get that then, because it could be a circumstance where you go through the process, you don't get all that you need, and if something happens to that person thereafter, or something happens to your relationship with that person, and you can't go back to them and ask them questions, so like they literally might transition or fall ill to where they can't provide that information to you. So you want to be mindful to get as much as you can, and that's why education is important. So going in that, I'm supposed to get my lifetime Odu. I'm supposed to get taboos connected to my lifetime Odu. All right. You're supposed to get all of that information. And, hopefully they're going to give you incantations and other details related to your lifetime Odu that's going to help you in studying and understanding that particular mechanism. You send so and look at me, they give you a hand of Ifa, Eshu, Oshun. If I started there but went to Isese, do I have to get new issue? You're going to have to ask the person that you initiate with. I completely understand your question. Is a really good question, right? I do know some people who have chosen to, like, this is just what they wanted to do. The people that I know who did transfer from, it was Lukami into Isese, they said they just wanted to start over from the door. Nobody forced them to do it or told them. I won't say forced, but nobody said you have to start over and get these devices anew. I would imagine that it would have to do with, like, are those devices that you have properly activated? So whoever you're working with, you would, just say, is this correctly done? And they can check that for you, and it will be up to you then. Now, the hand of Ifa, from what I know, and you guys will have to tell me, because I've been told something different, that what I was shown as the hand of Ifa in Lukami is not the sacred Aikin that I know of in the Isese. What somebody told me was the hand of Ifa. I don't know if they were right or wrong, was literally some Ilekis. It was a bracelet Ilekis at that. It wasn't even a full set of Ilekis. So I don't know. If that's the case, yeah, you would have to get another hand of Ifa if it is not consecrated Aikin. I don't even know how that works. Greetings, Benjamin. Thank you for joining us. You on IG today. Do you have to do your sacrifices before you get initiated? What sacrifices are you referring to? I don't quite understand the question. If you're referring to doing elbow before you go through the initiation process, or you saying like before you even come into the initiation process, I would definitely recommend that you have had at least one Ifa divination session and have done full on elbow through that process before you even consider going through Ifa initiation. If that's the question that you're asking me, but I'm not sure. You said, is it ever too late to put your hand in Ifa after being told to do so after hiccup? No, it is not. Absolutely is not. If you've been told 20 years ago and you're ready to do it now, it is perfectly okay to go down that path. Ifa will always accept you, right? If you're doing it from the right heart in the right space, for sure. Okay, so you're saying yes, that's what you're saying. It's not mandatory to your question. It's not mandatory that you do elbow before you ever get initiated, but the reality of it is not the most conducive move not to do so. I actually recommend that you, because you're initiating, somebody's initiating you, right? You're initiating onto the Orisha, but somebody's taking you through this process, a priest or a priestess. So you need to vibe with that person just as much as you need to vibe with the idea of getting initiated, because this is the person that should be doing your spiritual work throughout the rest of your or their lives. All right. So that's a very important connection. It's not something to be taken lightly. It's not just, okay, well, I'm going to get initiated. I'm going to find somebody to just initiate me without knowing who this person is or understanding anything about them. I hope that answers your question. Okay, before I get to this one, we got a few. Okay. Greetings, greetings. How are you, Walter? Greetings, my dear. Greetings. Welcome, guys. Thank you all for joining. So, does initiation require you to become an Ifa priest or priestess? No, it does not. You don't have to become an Ifa priest or priestess. You can be told this well before you get initiated or during the initiation process itself that you are meant to be or you are called to be an Ifa priest or priestess, right? But it's not for everybody. And also, initiation does not automatically make somebody a priest or a priestess. I do not know where this came from, but some reason people think as soon as they get initiated, they are an Ifa priest or a priestess. No. What makes you part of the Ifa priesthood is your ability to divine and understand the mysteries, right? Babalawo is a father of mysteries, and Ianifa is a mother of mysteries. Mysteries, that's the hidden knowledge of Ifa so that you understand the divination protocol. You understand how to put together a kosher spiritual medicine to help people to heal. You understand how to perform Ebo. That is what makes you an owl, all right? Okay, an owl being, owl is just short for Babalawo, right? Okay, that is what makes you an Ifa priest or a priestess, not going through the initiation process itself. So some reason there's a false narrative about that, and it's just not true. You cannot just go through initiation process and begin to do Ifa readings for people. Definitely not for me, because I would never accept that. Just because somebody went through initiation and then they just start doing readings on, not gonna happen for me personally. I need somebody who know what they're doing. Yeah. So yeah. For some people, the priesthood may be revealed through that initiation divination process, as I said before, but that path is just not, everybody's not meant to be a priest or a priestess, guys, right? So you think about it, back in traditional Yoruba society, everybody was walking around being an Ifa priest or priestess or a priest or Olorisha or something like that. There would be nobody else to do the regular work of society. So everybody would just be doing readings and ritual work, and society would never progress. That is not the way it works. I don't understand why, you know, that got passed around. You're asking me what is the process? The process for what? You gotta explain to me exactly what you're talking about. Are you saying the process for Ifa initiation? Or are you saying the process of excuse me, becoming a priest or a priestess? All right. So can you walk away from Ifa after you go through the initiation process? Definitely. You can. You can choose to walk away, right? But doing so definitely can lead to greater life challenges. You made a commitment, right? And so it is, even though I equated it to a marriage earlier, there's no divorce in Ifa in the same way it is in the sense of a westernized marriage situation. So you can't technically divorce once you've had that essence of that Orisha to be deeply connected to you in that way through the initiation process. Like, you can't just get rid of it, right? You can definitely stop interacting with it in a way that will cause you to lose that connection on the same level that it was through the initiation process. But like, why go through it? That's why I say you need to take your time and know what you're going through. You need to know who you're going through that process with, because that's most of the time when people have challenges and say they don't want to practice Ifa no anymore, usually because of people that they've worked with in the past. Okay, you're asking for the process. So this live stream is not about the process, it's about the purpose. But I did do a live stream a while back. It's on the YouTube channel where we talked about the full process, like, A, B, C, D, what happens throughout it. So I encourage you to watch that video, because that will take a whole lot more explaining than I'm prepared to do today in this episode. Okay, Ifa and Orisha initiation process. So you guys asked about this earlier, and somebody submitted this question beforehand. Like, what is the difference between Ifa initiation and Orisha initiation? This is important to know as well, because of a lot of the diaspora traditions, excuse me, guys. Because of a lot of the diaspora traditions, the Lukumi, Santeria, and things like this, these dynamics have been conflated, because when you go through that process in Santeria, when you go through initiation, oftentimes it is with all of these different orishas at once. That's not how it works when it comes to Isese. You go through Isese, and when you say Ifa initiation in Isese, you are initiating unto Orunmila, the witness of destiny. Okay. Orisha initiation means initiating into a specific Orisha whose archetypal energy governs specific domains of life. And herein is the difference, because somebody said, like, it's basically the same benefits, or like the same outcome. So Orunmila governs destiny. He witnessed the destiny of everybody. So when you connect with Orunmila, you're going to be asking him questions related to, insight about your destiny, your path, your purpose. What should you be doing in order to fulfill that? That's why you connect with Ifa. And also, of course, if he is your head Orisha, because for some people, Orunmila is their head Orisha. But if you initiate onto another Orisha, you're connecting with them based on their domain of control. So you're connecting with them to get greater insight about what they do, right? So, for instance, let's say, trying to think. Okay, I'm gonna say Oshun for this, right? Oshun. So Oshun governs the material aspects of our lives. She's gonna help you out with health, with love, and social connections, relationships beyond just the romantic love. I mean, here, finances even. And so you would connect with her, you would initiate onto her. Most people would do this if they are a child of Oshun, but some people choose to initiate onto her even if she's not their head Orisha, and that's perfectly fine as well. But because she governs specific domains, that is what you're going to connect with her for, and look at those specific areas of your life and ask her for guidance and help in those particular areas. Okay, you said thank you. You'll definitely watch it. Okay, perfect. So that's how that works. It is definitely not the same. Okay. Let's see. This was another question, and we kind of talked about this earlier. Is receiving Ilekis the same as initiation? Not in Isese. All right. I know they have the Ileki ceremonies in the other traditions, the Lokami. That's not the same, because, like I said before, even I was told by someone that receiving the hand of Ifa was literally receiving what that person showed me was Ilekis for Ifa, not the sacred Akin. Okay. But in Isese, Ilekis are received as part of the initiation rites and ceremonies. So we go through initiation. If you receive your hand of Ifa during that time, you will also receive the Ilekis for it. Now, if you get your hand of Ifa prior to going through full-on Itefa, you probably already received your Ilekis prior to that point, right? And so you could absolutely get a new set or something like that. No issues there. But you might not need it if you already have something and you're satisfied with what you already have. Okay. But in Isese, like, that does not constitute initiation whatsoever, just by receiving some Ilekis. And be cautious of that if dealing with another tradition. If somebody's taking you through a ceremony and like charging you $3,000-$4,000 for a set of maybe 5 to 7 Eleki. Just be cautious with that, guys. Okay. Do you need to be initiated unto your head Orisha before Orunmila? So not necessarily, right? But again, Orunmila is the Orisha of destiny. This is why most people go the path of Ifa initiation first before they do that, especially in the Isese tradition. They'll go through Ifa because he holds your destiny. He holds knowledge of what you're meant to do. So therein, during that process, you're going to receive your lifetime Odu. You're going to receive your taboos and things like that. Whereas with the Orisha initiation, you will get it to some degree, certain aspects of it, but not the same elements, right? But you can still initiate to the Orisha first, any Orisha first, before you initiate to Orunmila. It's your choice. You're not forced or compelled to go in a certain order. If you're working with an Ifa priest or priestess, you will most likely go down the pathway of Ifa initiation first, though. All right. Let's see. I got questions here. Oh, you said laugh out loud. I thought it was a question. Yes, so it's completely up to you, the pathway that you take. Can someone spiritually align? Can someone be spiritually aligned through their Ori without initiation, or is initiation required for true alignment? Yes, you can align with your Ori without having to go through Ifa initiation. People do this all of the time. Through different mechanisms. Ifa is one way to connect with your destiny. There are so many different practices that you can work with traditionally. I'm saying here not, I'm not referring to like new age religions and things like that. Excuse me. I'm not saying that those things can't help you to align with your destiny. I just, I practice indigenous spirituality, and I understand energetic balance through that mechanism. I'm not saying there are not other ways to do energetic balancing and connecting with your destiny and understanding your destiny at a fuller level outside of tradition, right? Especially African tradition. But, I know other traditions likewise do that. That being said, you don't even have to go through a tradition to do that. It's much harder, usually for the average person, especially in today's world, but it can be done. The number one thing is like how you live your life, your character, all right, your ability to follow your inner guidance and be directed through that mechanism and move through life with that knowledge and with that wisdom and stay on track with it. All right. Initiation, you're not required to do that to align with your destiny, though it is a very helpful, beneficial mechanism for efficiently and effectively aligning with your destined path. Okay, so let's see. You're saying a lot for you again, Benjamin. You're saying I want to seek guidance from a priestess who is not associated with Christian infused Yoruba. How do you seek out a person? So again, as I said before, at Asanee 44, we work with the West African tradition out of Nigeria, specifically Oyo State. Has nothing at all to do with Christianity or any other religion. Is pure tradition. That that is what we work with at our temple. Now, to answer your question, how do you seek it out? There are actually a lot of people who do that. I will say it's probably going to be easier for you to find someone who does that if you're working with people out of Nigeria versus in the Western world, because in the Western world, not necessarily that they're all infused with Christianity, but I do find that a lot of the practices do have some Christian elements, right? And definitely some non-true Isese elements to them. But that is not the reality in West Africa for the most part. Like if you seek out somebody in Nigeria, you probably gonna find the authentic practice more so than in the US and even definitely out of the diaspora, because a lot of times those are infused with Catholicism, because you know the transatlantic slave system. That's just how it goes. But most of the time, you are going to find some really mixed practices when you are working with the tradition in the U.S. Even if somebody is saying that they are practicing Isese, you would just have a lot of integration going on, synchronization, etc. Does initiation guarantee wealth or prosperity? Somebody told me that they were told that this would happen and they were guaranteed to get this. No, right? Initiation doesn't guarantee you wealth or prosperity or anything like that. It can absolutely help you to align with wealth or prosperity if it is part of your destiny. Okay, so it can remove any blockages that are there that have been keeping you from accessing whatever it is that is meant for you when it comes to those matters. Okay, it can also help you to balance out things to where you're able to maintain or sustain your wealth or prosperity. But just the notion of everybody having extreme wealth, especially millions, billions of dollars, things like that. First of all, that's not even a thing, because that's not meant for everybody. That's just the reality of life. Everybody was not the same way with priests and priestesses. Everybody was not meant to be wealthy. Some people's destiny is actually tied to them learning really significant lessons when it comes to finances and prosperity and things like that. And they'll have to go through challenges to achieve that. And even after going through those challenges, it's not guaranteed that they're just going to be a millionaire thereafter. Okay. So it is really tied to your destiny. Ifa initiation, as I've said before, is meant to get you to align with your destiny path. What you came into this earth to do. That looks different for everybody, even for people who have the same Odu. Guys, hold on for a second for me, please. Okay, sorry about that. Thank you guys for staying around. Let's see. Yeah, so that's just not the reality. Alrighty, so you're saying you were told, I was told by Obatala to initiate 15 years ago, finally did 23, still don't know why I was called to. Why when Orisha come to us to initiate Obatala confirmed my head Orisha. So have you not experienced any changes or anything? Okay, you saying it came via a dream, like you were told. Did you confirm with your priest, whoever took you through the process, that this was a true calling from Obatala? And even so, like you're called to, again, all of it is about alignment. It's about destiny alignment. But my question here is like, have you not experienced any benefits through that process? You said 2023, so we're about 3 years out. It depends on when you initiated in 2023. So you're, around the 3 year mark. What did you not experience any benefits that you could say, okay, this is why I needed to go through this process, right? So it could have been some things that you were doing, especially when it comes to taboos and things like that, that you needed to stop doing, or else you would have faced really severe difficulties in life. And if you received that information during the initiation process, you could have been able to reconcile that possibly. Um, you saying you absolutely have, but wonder why, right? So that's why, right? So the benefits, if you've experienced benefits from that process, Batala wanted to bless you in that way. And it may have been some things that were stuck that couldn't have been moved without you connecting with Obatala's energy closer, because in doing so through the initiation process, you gain greater insight. You gain a whole lot more wisdom, because Obatala like governs those aspects, wisdom, right? Patience, peace of mind. So, Obatala, yeah, it's like moving at a snail's pace. So, you're learning to be more patient in life, having the capacity. I wouldn't even say just learning to, but when you're initiating onto Obatala, do you have more capacity to do those things? So, it should unfold. It may not unfold like right away, but over time, you should be able to see, okay, this is the benefit that I received. So this is definitely one of the reasons why I initiated. I needed to initiate. Okay. Um, he said, what preparation does one need to do prior to seeking going through EFA initiation? I did discuss that before, but I'll just reiterate quickly. Education, right? Learning. That's my number one thing. Just understanding what the tradition is, understanding what EFA initiation is about, and then also understanding the logistics of the initiation process with the person, or temple, or whoever you are initiating with. All right. Oh, you said you didn't initiate unto Obatala, you did it with Ifa. And so your question is, why are you being called through Obatala? Have you confirmed that you've been called to initiate to Obatala? Maybe that's what you were saying before when you said, yes, I'm not sure. Okay, so going back to this, what happens if you're initiated by the wrong person? All right. So give me one more second, guys. I'm sorry. Okay. Sorry about that. The disruptions today. All right. What happens if you are initiated by the wrong person? And this is paramount. It's something I've been talking about as we go throughout this process. Sometimes the wrong person simply means that the priest or the priestess that initiated you is not the best fit for your life. Like you guys don't vibe together, things like that. Doesn't mean that the initiation experience itself was wrong or improper or something like that. But it absolutely, could mean that the person that you're working with is not the right person for you. In those cases, you need to respectfully, responsibly sever that tie, that connection with that person, and continue your path elsewhere. And there are ways to do this. I do have some videos on the YouTube channel that go through some of the steps of what to do. You want to be absolutely respectful in that process, because it happens. And even with the best preparation in the world, it can still happen. But the reality of it is that I see this happening more because people just rush into these connections, right? Instead of taking their time to figure things out and figure out the person that they're working with, and is this the person that is supposed to truly lead them down the path of initiation. All right. Can you lose the benefits of initiation at any point in your journey? So the ritual work is the ritual work. It's performed, during initiation, and you receive your knowledge of the Odu. That cannot be undone. The alignment that was done through the ritual work cannot be undone. It's the same concept of marriage, right? And so the real true definition of marriage is, marriage actually happens when you consummate the relationship. Okay, it is not a piece of paper like they show you in the Western world. True marriage is consummation when you actually have sex with the person. And yes, a lot of people are married without even having the paperwork. Whoever you slept with, you effectively married them, right? So because you've connected yourself with them in a way that can never be undone. All right. Even if you're not actively in a sexual relationship with them, you can sever certain aspects of that bond. Is yes, definitely soul ties and stuff like that. So you can do that, but you can never take away the fact that that act actually happened. All right. That's what I mean. And no, I'm not saying that you have sex with anybody during initiation. If that happens, if somebody tells you that's supposed to happen, they are completely in the wrong. You need to run away as soon as possible. But what I am saying is it is akin to that process. You can't undo it after it's done. All right. However, you can begin to walk waywardly. You can leave the path of Ifa, and in doing so, you're going to experience imbalance most likely or lose your way. That's just the results of the same way, like in an actual marriage. You consolidate that through consummation, but then the you could both go your own ways, and your relationship, your bond, is no longer as strong as it was through that act, or prior. Hopefully it was strong prior to that act, but especially through that act, because that act actually seals the relationship. And like if you even think about like a seal in real life, that's why especially it is harped upon a woman to be a virgin, because technically, the man that pierces, her hymen and draws the blood from her, he is the one who, like, she is married to first, obviously, and then she of course have sex with other men, but that's when that seal or that bond is put together. And so, you can't take that away, but that connection can absolutely become weakened through neglect. Okay. Are there consequences for receiving initiation improperly? Absolutely. And I get this question quite often. And unfortunately, there are some situations where people have gone through improper initiations, right? And so it can create a lot of problems, especially if you were somehow connected to evil or negative spirits during that process, or a passageway was open up for you to do so. So it could obviously lead in misalignment in so many different ways. It can lead to major illness, hardships, serious life challenges, and even up to death. That's why I harp on know who you are initiating with. Understand what is going on through that process. All right. Can a bad hand of Ifa ruin your life? So this should be hand of Ifa. Initiation shouldn't be there. But can a bad hand of Ifa ruin your life? Yes, it can as well, because the same thing can be done if it's improperly done. If negative forces have been placed in a hand of Ifa, it can lead to serious illnesses. And even I've been asked that particular question: can somebody place negative spirits in your hand of Ifa? Yeah, they can, and give it to you under the guise of it being an energy that is connected to Ifa or Orunmila, when it's truly not. Okay. That being said, neither one of the situations are permanent, obviously, unless it results in you transitioning from the earth. Otherwise, there are remedies that can be put in place to address those through traditional protocols, spiritual medicine, elbow, and so many other dynamics. So, you have to consult somebody who can actually help you out with that process. What happens if someone ignores what Ifa reveals to them? So, like, you're going to suffer the consequences, right, of not listening and not following that path. And it happens. That's just the reality. So, um, your guidance, any guidance we receive, is meant to correct imbalances, right? You neglect that, things are going to happen. They're going to persist or get worse. Can you buy your way into initiation, right? So you can't buy your way into initiation simply by paying for a ceremony. Now, obviously, paying for the ceremony, as we've discussed several times throughout, is absolutely part of the initiation process. But you're not paying for the outcome of just, okay, I'm aligned with my destiny. I don't have to do anything else after that. I'm good to go, etc., etc. No, you pay for the initiation process for sure. You go through all the steps and the stages. You will receive the especially initial alignment, but you still have to do the work thereafter. You still have to live your life. All right. So I have a special announcement for you guys. um I'm going to, this is actually my last like final regularly scheduled live stream, as I've been doing like every 2 weeks throughout. So I'm like moving away from the live, public broadcasting as I have been doing on this particular channel. Like we are moving a lot. Well, we already have the website. We already have a lot of content on it, and we're going to remove a lot of our activities to that specifically, especially as it relates to IFA. So, website, our blog, newsletter. Definitely sign up for the newsletter, guys. If you want to stay in touch with us, I do plan to continue to do the Odoo post and the regular monthly newsletter, and just update the blog with different insights as needed. Okay. I will maintain the other social media profiles to a limited degree. So, I'll be posting on other platforms as it comes along. I'll try to be more consistent, but not as frequent as I have been, right? And so we do have a lot of resources on our website at present, a lot of information there. So please check that out. Go to it. There's a lot of free information that you can find out about the tradition. Okay. The regular Odoo posts are still going to be coming out as far as Olodumare allows us to produce those. Any updates, any news about our offerings, be sure to go ahead and sign up for the newsletter, guys, at asanee44.com newsletter subscription. You can go directly to that page and enroll and get those regular weekly hits for anytime we send out something. So we are definitely going to stay active. This is done for a number of reasons. In part, we definitely want to own our presence. Social media is something different. We are definitely getting much more busy, which is a great thing, but it definitely takes up a lot of our resources and our time as well. We want to dedicate a whole lot more energy to working with our established client base, because that is the most important for us, is to meet you guys' needs on that one-on-one basis. So if you don't have any more questions, comments, or concerns, I am going to close out and bid you guys farewell. I definitely wish you a blessed and beautiful day. As always, guys, Ashe. We're going to go ahead and close out. So take care, all.